It happened in front of hundreds of people, and almost no one noticed the moment that changed two lives forever. A successful businesswoman stumbled on the courthouse steps after the heel of her expensive shoe snapped clean off. Some people laughed. Others walked around her as though she were invisible. Then, from a tiny shoe repair cart across the street, a tired single father quietly left his workbench, knelt on the warm sidewalk, and repaired her broken heel without asking for a single dollar. Neither of them could have imagined that this simple act of kindness would uncover hidden pain, restore broken dreams, and transform far more than a pair of shoes. If you believe kindness still has the power to change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment about why compassion matters, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel. Every act of kindness begins with one caring heart, and together our community can keep those stories alive. Graham Foster had learned long ago that life rarely rewarded the loudest people. It rewarded those who quietly kept going when every reason to quit stood in front of them. Every morning before sunrise painted the city skyline, he loaded his small repair cart with leather polish, thread, glue, tiny nails, replacement heels, and worn but carefully organized tools. By the time sunlight reached the sidewalks, he was already working outside the county courthouse where office workers, lawyers, teachers, parents, and tourists hurried past him every day. His greatest treasure wasn't the repair cart. It was his 9-year-old daughter, Elsie, whose smile somehow survived every hardship they faced together. Since losing her mother to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, Graham had become both father and mother. He braided her hair with clumsy determination every morning, packed homemade lunches, attended every school meeting, and somehow still managed to keep food on the table, repairing shoes that most people threw away instead of fixing. Money was always tight. Bills often arrived faster than customers. Some afternoons he barely earned enough to cover dinner. Yet Graham never let desperation steal his kindness. Elderly customers often discovered their repairs had quietly become free. Children with torn school shoes were never charged. Veterans sometimes found polished boots waiting for them before they could even ask. Many people believed generosity belonged only to wealthy people. Graham believed generosity belonged to anyone willing to care. Across town, Maren Caldwell appeared to have everything life could offer. She was the chief executive of a respected architecture firm that designed award-winning public buildings. Elegant clothes, expensive meetings, polished speeches, and magazine interviews surrounded her daily life. Yet beneath the carefully maintained image lived a woman exhausted by loneliness. Her father had built the company from nothing before passing away unexpectedly several years earlier. Since then, Maren had buried herself inside endless work, believing success could somehow silence grief. It never did. Every achievement felt strangely empty because there was no one left to share it with. That bright afternoon she rushed toward the courthouse carrying documents needed for an important property agreement that could secure dozens of jobs for her employees. Reporters waited nearby because the project had become local news. Investors stood at the entrance checking their watches. Then everything stopped. The thin heel of her designer shoe caught between two uneven stones and snapped. Her balance disappeared instantly. Papers scattered through the warm breeze. She barely avoided falling completely. Embarrassment rushed across her face as strangers glanced over before continuing their day. One young executive smirked, another person whispered something that made nearby people chuckle. No one stepped forward. From across the street Graham noticed immediately. He carefully placed another customer's repaired boot on the counter, grabbed a compact repair kit, and crossed the street with calm determination. Without making her feel embarrassed, he simply smiled kindly and gestured toward a nearby bench. He examined the damaged heel with practiced hands. Years of experience allowed him to understand exactly what needed to be done. Within minutes the broken heel was reinforced with a stronger internal support than the original factory piece. He cleaned away every trace of damage until the shoe looked nearly new. Maren reached for her purse. Graham gently shook his head. Some days people need help more than invoices. Those simple words settled deep inside her heart. She insisted anyway. He smiled again and explained that her gratitude was payment enough because everyone deserved a little grace on difficult days. She thanked him sincerely before hurrying into the courthouse, never expecting to see him again. But kindness has a strange habit. of refusing to stay forgotten. Over the following weeks Marin found herself walking the longer route to her office simply to pass Graham's repair cart. She noticed things others overlooked. She watched him patiently repairing a teenager's torn backpack zipper even though that wasn't technically his job. She saw him giving cold bottles of water to exhausted delivery drivers during unusually hot afternoons. She noticed him helping an elderly woman carry groceries after repairing her walking shoes. Most importantly, she saw the joyful way his daughter greeted him after school every afternoon. Elsie would run toward the repair cart holding homework, artwork, or exciting stories from class, and Graham always stopped working completely to give her his full attention. Marin realized she hadn't witnessed love that genuine in years. One afternoon she finally sat beside the repair stand while waiting for another meeting. She learned that Graham had once owned a proper repair shop before medical bills following his wife's illness forced him to sell everything. Rather than surrender, he rebuilt his business one customer at a time from a simple sidewalk cart that he never complained that he simply kept moving forward. Meanwhile, problems inside Marin's company grew worse. A senior financial executive named Victor Haynes quietly manipulated budgets, delayed employee benefits, and secretly diverted charitable donations into complicated investment accounts that benefited his own interests. Because Marin trusted him completely while focusing on expansion projects, the warning signs remained hidden. The first person to notice something unusual wasn't an accountant. It was Graham. One afternoon Victor arrived at the courthouse wearing expensive shoes whose heel had separated completely. He impatiently demanded immediate repairs while loudly criticizing everyone around him. As Graham repaired the shoes, several financial documents accidentally slipped from Victor's briefcase. Graham respectfully gathered them before the wind could carry them away. He wasn't trying to read them, but one page caught his attention. Months earlier Marin had proudly announced a scholarship fund honoring her late father. Graham remembered because Elsie's teacher had encouraged struggling families to apply. According to the document lying in front of him, that scholarship account appeared almost empty despite public announcements claiming otherwise. Something felt wrong. Graham quietly returned every paper without mentioning what he had accidentally seen. Days later Elsie sadly explained that several deserving classmates had been denied scholarship support because funding had mysteriously disappeared. The coincidence weighed heavily on Graham's heart. He debated whether speaking up might cost him customers or create problems he couldn't afford, but kindness without courage sometimes leaves injustice untouched. The next afternoon, when Marin stopped by to have another pair of shoes polished before a meeting, Graham carefully shared what had troubled him. He spoke gently, making it clear he might be mistaken and asking only that she verify everything herself. Marin appreciated his honesty enough to investigate. The results shocked her. Months of careful auditing uncovered a sophisticated financial scheme that had quietly stolen funds from scholarships, employee emergency assistance, and community housing donations. Victor had hidden everything beneath layers of legitimate business expenses. Authorities quickly intervened. The missing money was recovered before even greater damage occurred. Dozens of employees kept their jobs, hundreds of students regained scholarship opportunities, families waiting for affordable housing projects finally received the support originally promised. When reporters praised Marin for exposing the fraud, she refused to accept the credit. She publicly explained that the truth had begun with a humble shoe repairman whose honesty mattered more than his circumstances. The interview spread rapidly across television, newspapers, and social media. For the first time, thousands of people noticed the small repair cart beside the courthouse. Business changed almost overnight. Customers lined up not because Graham had become famous but because they trusted the character behind his work. People traveled from neighboring towns simply to meet the man who had refused payment for fixing one broken heel. Some customers paid double, others quietly left generous tips. Several local businesses partnered with him. Within months Graham saved enough to rent a modest storefront that he named it Foster Repairs. Because he wanted Elsie to know their family name represented integrity rather than wealth. Yet the greatest surprise came later. Marin visited the new shop carrying an old wooden box that had belonged to her father. Inside rested worn work boots, cracked leather gloves, faded photographs, and handwritten journals from the early years of his career. She explained that before becoming a successful businessman, her father had repaired shoes while attending college. Every opportunity he later received had come because strangers believed in a hard-working young man trying to survive. She admitted something she had never shared publicly. Watching Graham care for people had reminded her of the father she missed every single day. success had slowly convinced her that leadership required distance. Graham had reminded her that real leadership began with compassion. Together they created a community program that offered free shoe repairs for low-income students before every school year. Veterans received complimentary repairs year-round. Apprentices interested in learning traditional craftsmanship could train inside Graham's growing shop while earning honest wages. The program expanded faster than anyone expected because generosity inspired generosity. Former customers volunteered, local companies donated supplies, teachers recommended struggling teenagers seeking meaningful work. Families who once needed help eventually returned as volunteers helping others. Elsie watched everything with wide eyes. She saw her father's tired hands become symbols of hope instead of hardship. She saw strangers become friends. She saw kindness multiply in ways money alone never could. One sunny afternoon nearly 2 years after the broken heel had first brought them together, the city organized a community appreciation event outside the courthouse. The mayor recognized volunteers, teachers, nurses, firefighters, and local businesses that strengthened the neighborhood. At the very end, Marin stepped onto the stage holding the repaired shoe Graham had fixed all those months earlier. She explained that many people believed success was built through brilliant ideas, expensive investments, or powerful connections. She had learned differently. Sometimes the greatest change begins when one exhausted single father quietly kneels on a sidewalk and refuses to charge someone for a broken heel. The crowd stood together in heartfelt applause. Graham looked toward Elsie, who smiled through joyful tears while clapping harder than anyone else. That he realized life had never truly rewarded him with riches. It had rewarded him with something greater. A daughter proud of her father, friends who had become family, work that carried dignity, and the knowledge that even the smallest act of kindness could echo farther than anyone could ever predict. Before we reach the end of this story, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment telling us about a time when someone's kindness changed your life, or how you hope to be that person for someone else. As the afternoon sun gently warmed the courthouse steps where everything had begun, Graham glanced at the same stretch of sidewalk where one broken heel had once stopped a stranger in her tracks. Countless people continued walking past, each carrying invisible burdens, silent hopes, and untold stories. He understood now that every passing face represented another opportunity to offer patience instead of judgment, generosity instead of indifference, and hope instead of despair. His greatest achievement would never be the successful shop or the recognition from the city. It would always be the simple decision to help another human being without expecting anything in return. Marin rediscovered the compassionate leader her father had always hoped she would become. Elsie grew up believing kindness was the strongest form of courage, and an entire community learned that the smallest act of grace can become the beginning of someone else's miracle. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, the world rarely changes because of grand speeches or perfect people. More often, it changes because one ordinary person chooses kindness at exactly the moment someone else needs it most.